really think that kind of the germ of it came from my dad. He gave us a journal of his travels to Europe in the 1930s. And I was always intrigued by the fact that he could come from Alabama and go to Europe. And so I think that kind of wanderlust got started then. And the idea of going around the world is something I've always wanted to do. I didn't know which airplane I would do it in. And then when this opportunity came up with the HondaJet, I thought, you know, it can't possibly be any better than to take Kim and for us to do it together and do it in a style and a level that we've never dreamed of.
When Julian brought up the idea of going around the world in an airplane, my first reaction was, have you lost your mind? What on earth are you expecting? And within about 20 minutes, I just got thrilled.
We kind of talked around, you know, about this great book, Around the World in 80 Days, and thought, well, we're in the hotel business, so 80 stays is clever. And ultimately, it came around to us looking at hospitality around the world and seeing how many different versions we could experience in a short amount of time. So that's what we did. We went around the world and we saw hospitality in every form and fashion you can imagine. And we wanted to bring that back to our company, Innisfree Hotels, that we started 30 years ago with one hotel, and now we've got a collection of hotels and a lot of amazing people that are always looking for new ways to engage our guests. So we felt like our job was to look at design, look at food and presentations. We ate ourselves around the world. We saw great interior design, we saw great architecture, and we saw great cultures, corporate cultures of how to give hospitality that came from the heart.
The distance of time between the moment we decided to do it and the departure was only 2.5 months, 3 months. So we didn't have a lot of time to anticipate, but enough that it was intense. For the most part, these were all new places for us. And then the first choice was Bhutan. And then we realized, well, we're very close to Nepal, let's go to Kathmandu. And then the geography sort of lent itself. We also knew we wanted to go to India to see a Baha'i temple. There were reasons for every single choice, and it grew from there.
I think it hit me when we got to Greensboro and saw the excitement around the Honda factory, and to see the great celebration really that was going on there with all the staff coming out to applaud us and wish us good luck, and it made us feel like maybe this is more interesting than we kind of thought. And, you know, when you're in the middle of something, you don't see yourself, right? So seeing it through other people's eyes made it real. For me, the part that was kind of like the big moment was when we left Halifax and headed towards Goose Bay and then Greenland, and because those are kind of uncharted territories. I'd never gone from west to east before across the Atlantic, and anyway, that was exciting because I knew we were going into an airport I'd never been into, and you know, we're terribly spoiled in North America, in Canada and in the United States, of having great weather reporting. So you kind of know what you're up against before you take off. And there's a point, there's a go, no-go point when you leave Goose Bay and you head to Greenland that you've got to decide whether you're going to continue or turn around. And then so you're checking reports all the way as best you can get it. And then when you make the call, it's important because there's no alternate, right? You go into this and then that's it. You don't have a plan B. You know, obstacles like icebergs, you can't put those on maps. And sure enough, as soon as we were coming in, we're on the approach, went over this last hill, and then all of a sudden there was this iceberg. It's like, seriously? I could actually bump into an iceberg. That's crazy. And you can't chart that.
How many times have you been here?
Well, I haven't been here every time I've crossed, but I've got more than 100 crossings, so.
I've always heard stories about the whole air traffic control system in Europe and how strict they were to having everything down to the last 10 or 15 minutes. Like you have a slot time, you have to take off within 10, 15 minutes of that slot time, and then you have to land within 10 or 15 minutes of your arrival time. That kind of anxiety for me was a big deal. Fortunately, I had Travis with me who's done it 100 times, and he kind of calmed me down saying, you know, everybody does it, you know, it's not as difficult as it may sound.
November 199 Hotel Juliet, the day radar identified. If released from Seville, descend level 70.
Descend level 70, 199 Hotel Juliet.
We were in Seville, and it's our first time in Spain, and we asked the concierge where we should go to hear some flamenco. He said, well, you got two choices. You can go to the tourist spot, which has got nice dinner and it's a wonderful thing, or you can go to something that will make your head explode by the end of the evening. And we said, done, we'll take the explode. So we go to this little place, and it's not very impressive. It's really just a stage and a room and chairs. You're just right there in front of this production that, and frankly, I didn't know what flamenco was. I know the dancing part of it, but I didn't know it was a thing with music and guitars and dancing all combined. You know, they play this beautiful guitar thing, and then they start what sounds like wailing. I mean, it's not music. It was almost like a chant. And you hear this kind of, and you go, wait a minute, this is Spain. This isn't, you know, an Arab country. And then it moved into the Spanish thing where they're doing this ay, ay, ay stuff, and the emotion was just so raw, and his face was all contorted, and he's screaming out these gut-wrenching, you know, lyrics that you don't understand, but everybody on stage is playing off of him, and the guitar player is playing faster, and he's emoting more, and then all of a sudden this dancer comes down and starts doing the, what do you call it? Castanets, and then stomping and then looking, sneering down at you as she twirls around, and then he's playing off of her, and she's playing off of the singers, and it's just this big, huge experience. And then everybody leaves, and you're kind of exhausted, and your head's about to explode, and then it's all over. There's nothing. It was all about the show. It wasn't about the drinks or the food or the atmosphere or anything. It was like you got to experience a super raw Spanish flamenco. One of the things that was impactful for me was that this convergence of cultures, you know, this Arab and this Catholic, you know, thing going on in it, and how it came out in song and dance.
I never know whether it's going to be great or boring or whatever for Julian, right? Because I'm exploring this area and he's exploring this area, now sharing back and forth. And there wasn't a misstep in this whole trip. Everything was just shockingly wonderful.
One of the unique points of a HondaJet is that you can go to 43,000, but it's not just a statistic. You can actually go to 43,000 and you can file for that and not be behind the power curve. And because we could file for 43,000, we pushed all the way through all the commercial aviation, right? You know, if you ask for a time slot, what they do is they put it in the computer, they put you as a second tier airplane because they put all the commercial guys in front of you. And if you're flying around in the 30s, you're just one of them. But if you push through it to 43, you get your time slot every time. And you leave when you want to leave. And you go all the way up there and you cruise along and then you push back through. And that's something I don't think we could have done in any other airplane of this category except in the HondaJet. Getting into the country of Bhutan is not easy. When we first called and said we were coming in our own airplane, they said it's just not possible, you can't do it. We don't allow anything but the Bhutan airline to land in Bhutan. And we actually knew of someone else that had done it before, so we kind of used that as a precedent. Anyway, they checked it out and checked with us, the aviation authority in Bhutan, and said it was okay. However, they said, before you land there, we have to send a navigator to meet you wherever you're taking off from. And that navigator needs to be sitting in the right seat when you come in. So we had Captain Kinga, an A320 pilot, and flies in and out of Paro every day. And the reason it's important is because there are no approaches into Paro. And Paro is in this valley surrounded by mountains that are 27,000 feet high, and the airport is actually 7,500 feet high. So it's a high altitude airport surrounded by even higher mountains and with no approaches at all. So it's completely visual. and you're looking at your GPS and you know where the airport is, but he's telling me to go towards a temple that's on the side of a mountain. And right before I get there, turn left to a different heading and go to that mountain. And right before you get there, drop the speed down to 200 knots, put in approach flaps. And he says, okay, put your wheels down. And it's like, I don't see the airport. He says, trust me, it'll be there. And we're kind of coming into this little mountain. I mean, not a big mountain, but just a hill. And he says, the airport's on the other side, trust me. And if you don't slow down now, you'll fly right over it. So we came right over the top of that mountain and then just dropped it into the runway, and it all worked out. It was just, I mean, it was perfectly choreographed, for him to get us into that airport.
It was, I would say, beyond exhilarating to a little bit terrifying.
Terrain ahead. Terrain ahead.
Oh, inhibit that.
In every airplane of this type, there's a terrain alert, and it goes over. It overrides everything. It's the computer's talking to you, saying you don't want to be in this position. And I was so involved in navigating, I didn't turn it off. So it went on all the way down, all the way down. And of course, everybody in the back was hearing alert, alert, terrain, terrain. And anyway, I know where the button is now to turn it off.
Of the experiences we've had with jets of this category, it's the most comfortable that I've been in, being able to articulate the seat, go forward and go back, and the lavatory is wonderful with a sink. What other plane has a sink like that? Sunshades are great. The skylight in the bathroom is wonderful. But getting to go to sleep now and then, even though our legs were very short, there were a couple of long days, and I was able to articulate these two back seats, center with the arms up. And it's truly very comfortable to nestle in there across the aisle. And that was a lovely napping place. A hammam is a public bath area in most Middle Eastern countries.
It was something that apparently you had to do if you go to Fez, and it's already 113 degrees. I mean, it is so hot, you can't breathe. And the alleyways are only as wide as your arms. I mean, and then there are goats and people, and it's all this kind of massive humanity. And you get it, you open this little gate and you go into this beautiful courtyard, and you're in this great little hotel scene. And then Kim goes, okay, let's go to the hammam. It's like, what's that exactly? She said, oh, it's a public bath. And I'm thinking, this will be great. So we go down to this little hole. It's a beautiful hole.
Yes.
And it's hotter. It's even more hot. I mean, it's suffocating, and it's got moisture in it. They wrap you up in a towel, and then this little lady comes out and starts throwing buckets of water on you. And then she wipes you down with mud, and then puts all this goop in your hair, and then throws more hot water on you. And I swear I could not breathe. I was just dying. And Kim was like, this is so great.
Maybe some tea.
And in this Medina is the largest in the world. And in that Medina, there are 120 other Medinas inside of it. So there's 120 neighborhoods inside of this massive, 400 or 500 year old village that really hasn't changed. If you want to step back in time, that's where you should go. Our transition has been from Citation 2 to a Phenom to the HondaJet. What I found with the Honda Avionics is that the process of getting in the airplane and leaving has been condensed to maybe 3 or 4 steps, and everything else is done by the computer. For example, you don't have to put in the outside air temperature. It detects that. I can get into the airplane and be taxiing in 7 minutes. And that I couldn't do in any other airplane before. It was always a 10, 15-minute process, but just because you had to do so much manually. And this is just, accepting the flight plan, inputting the weights, setting the V-speeds, and then accepting that whole initialization. Set the flaps and set your pitch, and you're gone. It's just great.
So far, so good. It's beautiful Bali.
In Ubud, Bali, Indonesia. We'd done all the things Kim wanted to do, but I wanted to go to the
Sacred Monkey Forest.
Sacred Monkey Forest. Of course, when you get there, they have these little bananas they sell you for a nickel, and then you can hold the banana, and of course the monkey will come and get it, but you're always given these kind of warnings, like don't tease the monkeys, and don't do this, and don't do that.
At one time, there was like 4 different monkeys climbing up Julian as he stood there, reaching around like this to get the banana, and everybody was
Their
having
little
a
feet
great
and their
time.
little butt were sitting in my hands. It was the cutest little thing.
It was really sweet. So when Julian said, okay, Kim, this is a once in a lifetime, are you not gonna do this? I sat down on the stone bench and I had my little banana and I was just kind of waiting for the onslaught of the monkeys. And this little baby comes up, sits on my lap. It was so dear. I was really enjoying it. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this jealous, angry monkey came out and chomped me on the arm. So I was trying to be brave and strong and I just sort of passed it off. But by the time we got back to the hotel, it was swollen and purple and itching and hot. So I went to reception and I showed her and I said, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but do you think I should go to the doctor? And she went, I'm calling the clinic right now. And so we ended up in the clinic and I had a series of rabies shots. So I've been inducted into the monkey tribe.
She loves bananas now.
He didn't need you do it.
He did.
Yeah.
I want to make very clear why I did that.
There's a bit of a theme that goes through the last 40 years.
This is taxing out in Bali.
Yeah, we're happy to be back on track, aren't we?
A friend that we met on the way made arrangements for us to stay in a very traditional Japanese hotel that was developed out of an old home. And so there's rice paper walls and a little garden, a private garden for each room, and you have the kimonos that you put on, and the refinement is just so. It's a kind of table where you don't sit cross-legged, but you sit and your feet and legs are under, and the table is set up high. And we were served breakfast the next morning, a traditional Japanese breakfast. So it was a real glimpse into ancient Japanese life. It was very filled with ritual but kindness.
What we found is that Honda is a verb. When you go on a motorcycle somewhere, you Honda to this point or that point. You know, Honda is such an amazing brand in that part of the world that if you come to Japan in a HondaJet, you're immediately celebrity status. If you want to go out into the world and find how different we are, you'll find how different we are. If you want to go out in the world and find people that are disagreeable or confrontational, and you think that's how they are, you will find those people. So you really do find what you're looking for. And in our case, we see the world as a community. We see, all the different cultures and people as our neighbors. And we wanted to go out and meet our neighbors. And with that attitude, I think that's probably what we attracted. All of our basic principles are the same. Everybody wants the next generation to do better than they're doing in their lives. Everybody wants to protect their children. Everybody wants more education. Everybody wants peace.
And then
That's
there's
the
this
day-to-day.
rich cacophony of diversity of how that's expressed in the world, whether it's in ritual or action or behavior, it doesn't matter. It comes from this same source.
We saw 28 countries in 65 days and 50 airports, north, south, east, and west. And we really got a sense of how this whole world is just so condensed and there's so much similarity between all these different cultures that I think was truly unique. There's no other way that you could take that in except in this kind of condensed way.
It was kind of like a slideshow between cultures instead of a movie, so you could see, the differences.
3 or 4 days in one city or one country is just not enough. We describe it as kind of going through appetizers. We've gotten all these tapas plates, now we want to go to the main course and next time get in deeper and really know deeper what each of these countries are all about. Kim likes to say that, you know, we went off to see our neighbors, but we found our cousins. And that's really, that's kind of the capper on the whole experience.